Hi, Nidhi. Welcome to our podcast, Agents of Security. Very excited to have you with us. For the audience, Nidhi is currently a professor at Rochester Institute, where her focus is a lot on cybersecurity and making cybersecurity models more secure. Nidhi, I'll let you quickly introduce yourself as well for the audience.
Thank you, first of all, to you and to Pooja for setting this up. I'm very excited. So I'm Nidhi Rastogi. I'm an assistant professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, and my research lab is called AI for Sec, and we do research in at the intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So it's like a combination. We design AI models for cybersecurity. We also do we also make sure that these AI models are secure themselves. So there's a lot of explainability and traceability involved. And then finally, being a step kind of departing from purely theoretical research, we also design tools and benchmarks for cybersecurity, so that there is real world impact and not purely limited to the lab.
Do you want to double click on the paper that you guys use, the eval paper
Yeah.
that you use?
Yeah, perfect timing. Since I was talking about, impact, real world impact, one of the research papers that came out of our lab, and I want to mention the names of my PhD students here. A lot of the hard work was done by them, Tanveer, Deep Kamal, and Lee. So what we designed was called CTI Bench, and it came out as a spotlight paper at NeurIPS 2024. What the paper did was basically, it was the first of its kind. We benchmarked large language models for the very first time for security operation tasks, very specific to that, and not like red teaming, not, prompt engineering or prompt injection, so to speak. This was purely focused on what a tier one analyst should be using these large language models for, which is what a lot of these companies that I'm going to mention were developing language models for. So CTI Bench had a very strong industry impact. It was used by Google, Cisco, Trend Micro. Eventually, MITRE also integrated it into their CWEs. And then eventually we also heard Meta and CrowdStrike use that as a framework to develop their own benchmarks. So the good thing about CTI Bench, and which is very applicable to our audience today, is that we kind of decomposed benchmarking into four essential tasks. And these tasks are, like I said, very much mapping to, a tier one security analyst. So these tasks were, threat advisory extraction, vulnerability, severity scoring, also identifying the threats, as well as, MITRE attack, tactics, techniques, and procedures identification. So these are the IDs that these analysts use to identify specific tactics and techniques. So, and then, as I mentioned, it was absorbed, not absorbed, I would say it was used widely for evaluating Sec Gemini, Cisco Foundation Sec models, etc. So we were very happy with the impact that this paper has made.
That's yeah, wonderful to hear. I think you have really solved one of the key problems that the industry is facing today, where everybody is trying to build some version of models for security, but nobody has a way to identify if what is good enough looks like and what is accurate enough looks like. So seems like a very impactful work. So congratulations to you and the team on that one. From what you have, all the research that you've done in this space, which security tasks do you think are best suited to be automated today with AI agents versus which you think are still unsafe or not ripe to be automated today?
Very good question. I love this question, Neha. And how we thought about it at that time, and I would say it was almost a year ago, but the research started, I would say, almost 2 years ago when we came out with the paper. From today's perspective, it will seem naive because, so I'm going to break down the response, into three tiers that we identify as of today. So these are, what is ready now. And that is what CTI Bench did. So that first tier is called ready now. So ready now meaning that triaging alerts, alert enrichment with, cyber threat intelligence information, with information or signals from your own environment. So that would be to indicators of compromise extraction or tactics, techniques, and procedure mapping. So these are very basic, ready now. And a lot of the open source benchmarks are kind of relying on these kind of tasks. But what is also ready now is I keep saying prompt engineering because it's such a popular word. Um, prompt injection based tasks, and also red teaming. So these are kind of ready now, and you'll see a lot of small companies and open source coming out. But I call there's another tier, which is the risky tier, and the risky tier involves automating incident response. It involves things like quarantining. It involves network blocking, endpoint isolation, these kind of tasks. Would you allow your AI to automate that as of today? So I'm not saying don't do it, but is the human decision kind of integrated into that kind of automation? Because these are sort of risky. So that's tier number two. And then there is another tier that now, because we think so much about benchmarking/evaluation, and I'll talk more about it. There's a separation. There's something called what we are not ready for today. The number one thought that comes to mind is attribution. So when you're triaging or when you're identifying a threat actor, how are you attributing your alerts to that threat actor? Those are some of them. And then there is also some kind of contextualization or geopolitical awareness, that needs to be integrated into this kind of the threat assessment. And there's also something called institutional knowledge, and that institutional knowledge comes from somebody who has experiential learning about your environment. So, will the AI be able to automate that eventually? Yes, but it is definitely more than risky. So, that's how we are kind of identifying that tasks need to what is ready for automation and what needs more human in the loop. But I would say we need to tread carefully in this space, because a lot of the vendors are kind of marketing that, we are AI powered, we are ready, but how do you know what the readiness level is? So these kind of, how do you address these risks? We are not saying we do not, but you need to be aware of the risks. So that's how I would kind of, create these kind of tiers. So that it becomes kind of a mental model for us.
So you are saying like tier one is what is ready to be automated today. Tier two is something that you need to provide more context around for it to be able to automate, and tier three is a bit more far away, where the institutional knowledge comes in a little bit more.
You could map these to tier one, tier two, tier three analysts, in your
Mhm.
security operations in a broad sense, not in a strict sense, but that gives you some context.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Then I think based on your experience, why do you think eval is so critical for AI security systems? I have not seen a lot of vendors claiming or showcasing their evals numbers, which, yeah, would love to get your thoughts on perspective on that.
That's a very important question, Neha. And I think the straightforward answer to that is because evals are important, are critical today, is because security AI, when we are automating cybersecurity operations, I mean, if there is a failure, those failures have real operational consequences. And we are very much ready to go on the happy path. But as real engineers, we also, and even researchers, we also need to be prepared for the failure cases. And that's how I would put it, why evals are so important. And that's why the way we were thinking about CTI bench, and retrospectively, it sounds like we did think a lot, but retrospectively, it does make sense that the way we identified those specific tasks, those were very useful in really understanding what the existing language models, large language models, performance was. But remember, at that time, agentic AI had not come into, I mean, we're probably talking a year later, but
Yeah.
agentic AI was not that popular. But when we ran the CTI bench against, Gemini and ChatGPT 4, I think 4.0 was the latest one at that time, the performance that it showed against, general tasks versus these four identified tasks was, shockingly different. So it
Mm.
performed very, very well on general purpose knowledge, like who's the president of the so and so country, what are the different parties and capitals and all those kind of general purpose knowledge. But when you stress test it against cybersecurity tasks, the performance was shocking, and it's out there in public for us to see. So that's why the consequences of, for example, also if a chatbot will tell you, give you a wrong response for a restaurant or some recommendation, nothing is going to go wrong. But if an AI chatbot which is integrated into cybersecurity, if it misses, if it kind of tags a true positive as a false positive or a false negative, that has real operational consequences. So that's why evaluations are very important. And I also want to take this opportunity to say that Evaluation is not something which will tell you where you are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Evaluations don't have that purpose. The purpose of evaluation is actually protection. Protecting
Mm-hmm.
your team, protecting your product, protecting your budget, because you will be avoiding making bad purchases or something that doesn't work for your environment. It also protects your analyst from tool fatigue. So you might as well do evaluation and know what does not work versus figuring out it out later on, because as you know very much, running your own security company is that security has, far-fetched repercussions. So all I'm saying is use evaluations as something to strengthen, to bolster your own products, and even to evaluate products that you're buying, but
Mm-hmm.
not to, assume that it will all work out, on its own, and it'll be all hunky dory.
That makes sense. So then, if you have to give a framework for the buyers in the market to think about, what are the kind of evaluation questions they should be asking when evaluating any vendor of any like security product, like what kind of questions do you think they should be asking?
I mean, the first question, that question is less about the tool, the evaluation tool, more about your environment.
Mhm.
As security professionals, we always have to do some kind of threat modeling. We need
Mhm.
to know what we are offering, what is our strongest, uh, you know, forte, in the product that we are building. So, what specific tasks do I need this tool to perform, and I want this tool to have these tasks? So instead of saying give me what you have, you need to be asking design for me, design for my environment, design for my customers, because tools and tasks will vary based on that. So for example, when we were testing CTI for general knowledge, and we got some kind of very nice responses, that this is the precision, this is the recall, but it made no sense as we saw that some of the CVSS scores, which is a vulnerability severity, so if it was not able to catch that, imagine that the vulnerability severity is, you're not getting the right response for it. Something which is more severe, you're getting a response from the AI that it is less severe. Where does my precision recall fit into all this? It makes
Mhm.
no sense, absolutely. So you have to not just identify the right tasks, but also the right metrics, and
Mhm.
not just fall for, you will see that, this company has these many false positives, 90% false positives. It's kindly completely missing the context.
Yeah. So
No.
then, what are the right metrics?
So that's a great question. That is a great question. I mean, so when you're designing these metrics, clearly accuracy, precision do not mean that the vals. I mean, that does not mean production performance. First of all,
Mhm.
if I'm saying my model is 90% accurate, or it is 95% false positives are getting caught. So what we should be doing is, in fact, we should be designing tasks that account for your type of alerts, what you are trying to generate, your type, your threat actors, for your data, and for your, measuring for your false positives. So the tasks are good, but are they aligned with your environment, and are
Mhm.
they aligned with what you want to your product to highlight? That is how these tasks should be identified. So broadly
Mhm.
speaking, yes, it will be measured in accuracy, precision, recall, but you have to identify the task specific, not like tool specific, the your platform specific. My
Mhm.
platform does this so well. So for
Mhm.
example, since you asked, for example, what is the precision for this tool to catch phishing attacks,
Mhm.
for insider threat,
Mhm.
those kind of, or APTs, or this type of APTs in this sector. So it is where specificity becomes very, very important, and not just
Mhm.
saying that this is working. uh,
Okay, so do not do like peanut butter over all the different kind of tasks, but break it down further and then look at accuracy and recall, precision recall on each of
Yes.
these.
So
Okay.
for example, if it is a government customer, for some of them, insider threat is a huge issue. They want to make sure that your environment, or sorry, the tool that you have designed for them, it does very well on insider threat detection,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
APT. So those kind of things. Whereas some organization will be like phishing is something that we deal with more, or ransomware. So
Mhm.
automatically, so then you design those tasks. Is this task actually able to, detect, or is able to measure these specific type of attacks. So
Mhm.
that there goes my example.
Most of the security buyers today actually ask the vendors to do some kind of POCs or pilot. And for example, we are talking to some of the customers, potential customers, and they have already evaluated like two, three other vendors, and none of them have met like their benchmarks, right, or whatever they're looking for. To save, no, I can only imagine if I put myself in the buyer's shoes, right? I can imagine the kind of work that that whole team has to go through, like onboarding the vendors and going through that whole process with them. What can you tell to those buyers? Like, how can they get a more accurate read on the vendor during the before the evals or POC starts and during the POC?
So yes, obviously, are these tasks mapping to what my tool is supposed to, where it's supposed to be launched and where it's supposed to be integrated? That's number one. Again, having a very close reading of what the customer wants. That's always number one. And then number two is you also have to make sure that these evaluations are built not off of clean data or not off of data which is clean, it is missing any noise, because real data is not clean. You would know very well that real data is not very clean no matter how much you try. There is a lot of noise in that data.
Mhm.
Will these evaluations work when the data is noisy? So that's
Mhm.
obviously requirement number one. So that's where you've taken care of the data. The challenge
Mhm.
is the vendor building their tasks not just off of clean data and that kind of thing. And then obviously, and that kind of also takes care of the adversarial aspect of the data. Noisy, it can be incomplete, it can be manipulated, manipulated inputs.
Mhm.
People think that, oh, this is sounds more very researchy. Real data is not like that. But anybody who has a teeth in this game will know that data comes in all formats. So those tasks need to be built with the reality check in place. Then obviously, like I said, the task specific. The scoring itself should also be task specific in that case. Scoring
Mhm.
sense, as I mentioned, F1, micro F1, precision recall, all of these need to be task specific and not just overall, that my benchmark is performing or my VAT is performing that well. And then how well is, let's say, we are building something for you, then are the certain automation tasks actually faster than human performance? There can
Mhm.
be some key tasks which are, your leading tasks or your flagship tasks. Are they really performing better than a human would be able to, perform? And then failure mode transparency is extremely important. What that means is, and I mentioned that in earlier also, is that everything will work fine on a happy path, but what happens when there are failure modes? And failure modes are dealt very differently by AI. It will
Mhm.
quietly not give you any kind of flag or will not give you any kind of alert that my confidence was lower in this scenario, and I do not, and basically it will not say anything. And that is more dangerous versus, getting some long garbage, which is verbose. At least you have gained some kind of intelligence in that sense. But if the AI is not giving you any kind of failure mode in transparency is what it is called. If it is not transparent, then it's basically left you in the dark. And how that comes is through traceability. Traceability meaning that even though these are like logs, but it is pointing you to where this intelligence is coming from. So
Mhm.
so that kind of understanding, and I hope that our audience understands that, uses as a knowledge when they are buying these kind of tools to evaluate their existing platforms.
That makes sense. One thing also I feel there is a blind spot in the industry is about, so a lot of people think about evaluation as the one time. It's like you evaluate, you have a number, good. I have 95% accuracy, I'm good to go. Do you think that's the right approach? Or how should they think about continuous evaluation?
Yeah, I think you answered it very well. Evaluation has to be continuous. Why? Because now we are dealing with three kind of environments. There is cybersecurity. The landscape is always shifting. We have new threats coming in. That does not mean the old ones go away. They are also around, and then you have newer threat vectors coming in, newer ways of attack surfaces is expanding continuously. The adversaries are also getting smarter. So that also feeds into the threat landscape increasing. Now we are also talking about AI. So what happens with AI is there is a drift. And what that means is that the knowledge gap in AI is also sometimes missing, and it needs to catch up with the new threats and with the new adversarial attacks and tactics and techniques. So all of that needs to constantly be fed into your the large language models, which are basically the backbone of agentic AI. So now what we are seeing is adversaries getting smarter, or coming up with newer ways of attacking the AI drift. Obviously the knowledge needs to be kept up to date, and then the threat landscape is also increasing. So if you are not evaluating continuously with model upgrades, or every now so, kind of missing out on the whole point that we are the latest and the greatest. So therefore, how do you know that without building a holistic evaluation? And I want to also talk about evaluation is not benchmark. With benchmarking, you're comparing with other models, other open source, or openly available large language models. With evaluation, you kind of know what are the gaps in my own product, in my own AI native platform, that I do not want my customer to find out. So therefore, that kind of makes sense to continuously keep evaluating. That does not mean that you have to become, excessive about it, but I think we will find out with time how frequent this should be.
Makes sense. And I think that distinction between benchmark and evaluation is super critical, right? Like, I think now that gets mixed a lot. And so having that clarity makes sense. Yeah. Any parting thoughts or advice, Nidhi, before I open to our audience for questions?
I think I just want to double click on this point that evaluation isn't about finding out, what is wrong in your environment. I mean, that is the fear that I have seen a lot, that, oh my God, you will know. But then if we are building something, if we are building something to evaluate a given security platform, then we are basically letting you know ahead of time where are the gaps. And that's where the expertise comes in. And we try and want to protect what matters. We want to protect the budget, we want to protect the team, the company image, and all those kind of things. So just looking at evaluation as so not as an adversary, but as a friend who is kind of stress testing you, is I would like to say the perspective, which is kind of important.
Makes sense. Um, want to see if anybody on the who is joining us today have any question for Nidhi. Okay, probably not. Nidhi, do you want to? I know like you started a venture.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that and say what is your vision for that?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Neha. So after we designed CTI Bench in my research lab, again, we also identified gaps because it was actually a benchmark. And, the reason I'm able to confidently differentiate between a benchmark and an evaluation is because we identified the gaps. We identified that, the 3 tiers that I talked about initially, what can be done easily was all we were able to capture using CTI Bench. So now we are developing a commercial version of CTI Bench, and it is called Credits Plus. And Credits Plus not only evaluates specific tasks, but also, workflow end-to-end, end-to-end working of agents, which are kind of behind the automation workflow for security operations. So I'm happy to talk more about it. For anybody interested, you can reach out to me. But I'm very excited about it. And this is a very, very interesting and a new space. And like I said, evaluations are your friends. There's nothing to fear about.
I think Himanshu mentioned that he found it very helpful, deep insights, and wondering if you guys can connect later. So maybe he can connect with you offline around that. Cool. I think Nidhi, your team has done tremendous work, and you guys continue to do tremendous work, and we are continuing to partner with you on how to make our own AI SOC agents more secure and perform with better accuracy. So really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and insights in this space with the audience and taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you. You're very kind, Neha, and thanks everyone.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.